Have you enjoyed the Hinsdale Choir? They've been awesome, haven't they? And the pianist, Claire, and thank you very much for that. And the strings, it's awesome to be able to listen to such fantastic talent. True Blue. In my country, we call people True Blue if they are fair dinkum Aussies. Has anyone heard of fair dinkum Aussies? It's kind of an Australian colloquialism that describes somebody that is authentic and true to their vision and to their life dreams and their life goals. In the world we live today, how easy it is for us to be influenced by other people and to absorb from people around us a life dream and a life goal and a life vision. But if you're true blue, it means that you stick to who you are. You are true to yourself. We have a famous Australian by the name of Steve Irwin. How many of you in Penang have heard of famous Steve Irwin? He's almost like a global phenomenon, and Steve Irwin is a classic example of somebody who is true blue, wrestles crocodiles, loves adventure, lived outdoors. Unfortunately, Steve was killed filming underwater when he got stung by a stingray. And around the world, people look at Steve as the quintessential Australian. He is the man that defines what it means to be true blue. But tonight I want to talk about a different kind of true blue. How many of you recognise how small Penang is in compared to the world? When I was a young person, Vadim, I lived in a place called Tonga. Has anybody ever heard of Tonga? Tonga is a small island in the middle of the Pacific. It's 20 miles long and it's 10 miles wide. And my father was principal of a college over there called Beulah College. And he came home one day and he was just tickled pink. He said, "I'm in class today, Glenn, and I took a world map and I asked the Tongans to point out where Tonga was." And guess where they pointed? They pointed to Russia. In their worldview, the world was as big as a 20-mile by 10-mile long island, and they had no idea that Tonga was such a small dot it wouldn't even appear on the map. But if you see those red squiggly lines there is a guy called Dan Buettner who decided to start riding his bike, and in 1987 he rode from Alaska to Argentina, a distance of 15,500 miles. Can you imagine that? Did you enjoy doing that, Nick? Don, you want to get your bike out and ride 15,500 miles? It's an incredibly long way. But when he'd finished riding America, he decided in 1990 to go and ride from one side of the United Soviet Socialist Republic to the other side, some 12,500 miles. That's a long ride through some pretty inhospitable country. And then, not to be outdone, he decided that Africa must not be left without a journey, and so another 11,500 miles he rode his push bike. Who would like to do that? Has anyone here ever walked all the way around Penang? This island here, what is it, 285 square kilometres, something like that? The distances that Dan covered on his push bike are incredible. And as he rode his push bike through the country and he observed at a slower pace than usual the villages and the communities that he went through, he was taken aback that in the same country there would be some villages and communities where the people seemed to be very different. They stood out from the rest of their environment. And as he looked throughout the world, he began to recognise that there were some cultures that seemed to have a package deal put together that enabled them to enjoy longevity when other people around them were not experiencing the same benefit. And in 1995, Dan Buettner published in the National Geographic magazine an article that referred to the secret of longevity. And he identified 5 zones around the world where people seemed to live longer than their counterparts. These zones he referred to as blue zones. And so that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about tonight. What does it mean to be a person who experiences longevity, someone who lives to be past 100 when people around you are dying significantly younger? The article he published in the National Geographic magazine really put Dan Buettner on a public stage that he had been on the edges of before, but he became very famous. And I don't know what it costs to hire him now, but you can hire Dan Buettner and he'll come and give you a nice talk on what you need to do to live longer. I'm coming free, so I hope that I can do Dan justice. The 5 zones that Dan talked about were a community in Costa Rica, there was another one in Sardinia, there was another one in Greece, and there was the Okinawans of Japan. But the one that stands out to me was a group of people living in Loma Linda. They are Seventh-day Adventist Christians living in Loma Linda in California, a nation that is perhaps embraced by all of the evils of Western lifestyle that I was talking to you about last night. Last night we were looking at the idea that the West is not necessarily best, that there comes with Western lifestyle inherent risks of increased risk of dying of heart disease, increased risk of having a stroke, increased risk of type 2 diabetes and other lifestyle diseases. But right there in the middle of California, there's a group of Seventh-day Adventist Christians who are living well into their hundreds and standing apart from the rest of the community around. And Dan was so amazed by this community that he chose this community as one of his 5 blue zones. The first thing that Dan recognised about these communities that lived a long time is that they didn't spend endless hours at the gym on ski machines or pushing weights or running marathons. He actually found that consistently across these 5 zones that people were living long ages, the people moved naturally. Exercise was part of their daily routine. It was not something that was added on or tacked onto their busy schedule. It is a challenging situation when you live in an urban environment in a high-rise building to integrate exercise into your life. And I was very impressed when I went over to the Penang Adventist Hospital and I went to catch the lift and I was confronted with a sign, "Today is the day you use the lift." And I thought, wow, even in urban environments, we can be strategic, can't we, about integrating exercise into our daily life. And Dan found that those communities that moved naturally, whether it was gardening, whether it was fishing, whether it was just going about their household chores, whether it was swimming, walking, doing things at a normal, natural pace, this seemed to be much more effective in giving longevity than those who were committed to exercise regimes that required high levels of aerobic fitness and required specialised equipment. And so Dan is encouraging us, if we want to live long lives, to integrate exercise into our daily life. And we may look at that a little bit later on. One of the things that Dan's research set him apart from the rest of people who have looked at physical longevity and physical benefits from health is that Dan was looking at a holistic view, and he noticed that in every one of these 5 blue zones where people were living well into their hundreds, there was a common theme that the people woke up in the morning and they had a sense of purpose. This must never be underestimated. I'm actually amazed in the Asian cultures that most of my Asian friends are driven. They wake up in the morning and they know what they have to do. In my country, we have people who are professional surfers. They live off government benefits and they ride the waves every day. And some of them find after doing this for a year or 2 or 3 that their life seems without meaning and purpose. And there are tragic health consequences that start occurring when you forget why you're waking up in the morning. Substance abuse increases, relationships break down, people who are aimless often will embark on risk behaviours that compromise their longevity and affect their health. Having a sense in purpose is so critical for our well-being. He also noticed consistently across these 5 blue zones that people knew how to pace their life. Is life busy? Yeah, I find that some of the taxi drivers I was talking to in Singapore work 15-hour shifts and they do that 7 days a week. That's a pretty intense work pace, isn't it? That's very, 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 very difficult if you're working over 100 hours a week. That's a very, very crazy pace of life. And I find that in my life, there is opportunity just to take on more and to take on more and to take on more and to take on more until you're working at such a frazzled pace that when Pastor Vadim says, "How would you like to come to Penang for a week?" you think, this is fantastic. It's an opportunity to just get away from the rat race, as we speak of in my country. Slowing down and learning to smell the roses is good for your health. It's a great thing. And some of us who are here tonight belong to a Christian fraternity called the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and it's key to our religion that we take one day in 7 and we just say we are going to stop as God asked us to. and we are going to rest. And Dan Buettner, who's not a Christian, not sympathetic towards Christianity, recognised in the community of believers at Loma Linda that this decision to take time out from the frenetic pace of life and to say no to all of the opportunities and just to be with family and community and to take time was actually key to their longevity. Fourth thing that Dan noticed about these communities that seem to survive long time is that they all seem to follow what he called the 80% rule. What is the 80% rule? The 80% rule is saying when you're sitting there down before dinner and your wife cooks you up a magnificent fare, that when you feel 80% full, you push the plate away. Don't wait until you feel gorged to say no. And he actually found, and you will find consistently, that if you visit nursing homes and you go and talk to anybody over the age of 100, you will very rarely find anyone over the age of 100 who has a large girth. Most old people have lived their lives frugally, and frugality is actually a secret to long life. So I am very nervous when I see amongst the Asian cultures a rapid increase in obesity as Western diets become more prevalent. So I would encourage you, if you want to live a long time, learn the 80% rule. Learn to say no before you are fully full. He also noticed consistently that they were sharing a predominantly plant-based diet. Plant-based food featured prominently in all of the diets of the 5 blue zones that Dan examined. And we're going to spend a little bit of time tomorrow night looking at the benefits of a plant-based diet. Dan Buettner and I would disagree on number 6. Dan actually suggested back in 1995, when he first did his research, that a small amount of alcohol every day actually conveyed a benefit to you. Yeah, recent research that's come out, some as recently as this month, has perhaps challenged some of Dan's original research back in 1995 when this was published some 20 years ago. And I think that we can convince you when you come back on the night when we're talking about drinking for life, that alcohol is something that is very dangerous to your health. Those people who want to enjoy good health don't need to have alcohol as part of their diet. But these last 3 are the ones that I want to talk to you about a little bit before I close tonight. What Dan noticed when he went around the world is that people who live long aren't individually healthy, they're actually healthy in community. How many of you here are grateful to the fact that you were raised by a mother and father that loved you? One of the things that I was very surprised at when I was a missionary in Bangladesh is the amazing way in which Asians are linked multi-generationally to their families. In Australia, my identity comes very much from the car I drive, the house I live in, the profession I hold, the people that I mix with. They define me as an identity, but I noticed in Bangladesh that you are defined from the moment you are born by the family that you belong to. Is that a fair observation in Malaysian culture as well? Family is very important. The church I go to is situated in a retirement village. There are industries in Australia that revolve around the caring for the old. In Bangladesh, I never saw a retirement village. All of the old people live with their sons and daughters. There is an obligation on you to care for the older generation and not just farm them off to contractors who you can pay to look after them for you. And Dan actually observed as he travelled around the world that people who exist in community are a lot more resilient than those who exist in isolation. People who take care of others, it confers a great benefit on themselves. And research has confirmed that if 5 or more of your friends are healthy, the chances that you are healthy dramatically increase. Conversely, if 5 or more of your friends are participating in high-risk behaviours, the chances of you becoming involved in risk behaviours increases exponentially. And I know from the community in which I work that I have spent the last 20 years working amongst the very socially disadvantaged of Australia, that there is nothing more true than you will become like those that you are with. as I wrap up tonight, I want to tell you the story of two sisters. These are both of my patients. Two sisters. The one on your left is the younger sister. And if you look carefully at her, you will find that she has no teeth, no top teeth. The reason she has no top teeth is that I took them all out. The reason I took them all out is that they were all rotten. They were floating in seas of pus, and there was no option for her teeth other than to go in the bucket. Her older sister, the slightly shorter one on your right, look at her smile. It's beautiful. When we did an examination on her, we found no decay in her mouth at all. And as someone who's been interested in anthropology and oral disease and the social determinants, as we talk about the context in which people live and how that impacts on their health, I was intrigued that these two sisters grew up in the same house. And by the way, I've taken all the teeth out of their mother and all the teeth out of their father, and they've got another one or two brothers and sisters, and I've taken most of their teeth out as well. Why is it that there is one sister who has been so resilient and has turned out so differently from the rest of her family? I was bold enough to ask both of these girls if they would let me share their story, and they were very happy. They're both my good friends, and they are aware that I'm telling their story. And I said to the younger sister, "What's different between you and your older sister?" And she kind of says, "Well, I didn't really have the same friends as my older sister." And so I said to the older sister, "Can you tell me your story?" And she says, "Sure. I was coming home from school one day. I was aged around about 8 years old. And as I was coming home, my next door neighbour was outside tending the garden and working with the flowers. And my next door neighbour said hello to me. And I said hello back. And from that time, I became very good friends with my next door neighbour. And my next door neighbour invited me to come to church with him. And so every Sunday I would go to church with my next door neighbour. And my next door neighbour would ask me to come round and would help me with my homework. And whereas my family had no connection to a world outside extreme poverty, from the age of 8, I was suddenly given the opportunity to mix and mingle with a group of people who thought about the world in a different way than my mum and dad. And that simple connection with an outside mentor transformed the life of this older sister so that she has all of her teeth, she has a job, she's connected with society, and she's actually moving forward. And I thought this is such a powerful example of what Dan Buettner is trying to get across to us. That there is resiliency in connection. That being healthy is more than just simply making individual choices. It's making choices that have a community ripple effect. If you want to be healthy, you need to surround yourself with healthy people. If you are healthy, then you need to mentor those who perhaps haven't had the same opportunities you have. And you can never underestimate the impact of community. What's special about the community in Loma Linda, California? They exist in community. They have an active church life. Every week they are going and they are being held accountable to their friends and their relatives. They're being checked up. People are looking out for them. They're ringing them up when they're down. They're visiting them when they're sick. They're engaged. They're interconnected. And modern research is just starting to realise how powerful this is in protecting young people against risk behaviour, in inspiring young adults to follow in the paths of their peers and their mentors in getting education and following career paths. The networks that they are able to encounter provide them pathways that give them a real positive impact. And I'm excited when I mix in Asian communities because I think you guys have had this nailed down for many, many years. There is no such thing, in my view, as individualism in the Asian culture. You understand family, you understand network, you understand connection. But as the Western influence begins to pervade, and as Hollywood and Fleet Street and the marketing of the West comes into your country, I want you to stand up and resist this trend towards individualism. The moment you disconnect from family and from the community at large, you are putting your own health at risk. It is really, really vital that we learn from people like these two sisters to be a mentor to those who perhaps have had less opportunity, or to connect with those who have a different perspective than you and benefit greatly from that. Tomorrow night we're going to have another look at eating right. And before we do that, I just want to finish with this one concept. It is becoming well established in the world of the public health world that people who belong are more likely to believe, and people who believe are more likely to behave. And I think that we need to recognise that if people are lonely and disconnected, that it does have a huge impact on their physical well-being. So if you are a person who has emotional reservoirs, share and reach out to find somebody who is lonely. You are going to have a huge impact on their life. And if you are trying to convince somebody to change risk behaviour, recognise that you will never get somebody to behave until they belong. I have learned as a dentist that nothing I say will make any sense or have any impact on people until we have first established a friendship. We need to belong in order that they will trust, in order that they will transform. And I would challenge you to process that in your own minds, in your own efforts to be healthy and to help others. Tomorrow night we're going to have a look at a plant-based diet. We're going to talk about the impact that diet can have on your life. I'd invite you to come back tomorrow night for that presentation.
There's no problem so big God cannot solve it. There is no mountain so tall He cannot move it. There is no storm so dark my God can't calm it. There's no sorrow so deep He cannot soothe it. If He carried the weight of the world upon His shoulders, I know, my brother, that He will carry you. And if He carried the weight of the world upon His shoulders, I know, my sister, that He will carry you. He said, come unto me, you who are weary, and I will give you rest. There is no problem so big my God can't solve it. There is no mountain so tall He cannot move it. There is no storm so dark He cannot calm it. There is no sorrow so deep He cannot soothe it. If He carried the weight of the world upon His shoulders, I know, my brother, that He will carry you. And if He carried the weight of the world upon God will carry you. God will carry you.
Good evening. It's really good to see all our dear Malaysian guests, and welcome to the program. Welcome to A Spiritual Journey. And those who are still in the lobby, come make your way to the auditorium and let's have a wonderful time together. I have a question. Who was here yesterday? Could you raise your hands? Oh, wonderful. And who is here for the first time tonight? Could you raise your hand? Let's give them a warm welcome. Those who are here for the first time, thank you for coming. And tomorrow, bring your friends, bring your neighbors. Let's pack this hall to its capacity as we travel into the world of prophecy. That's better now, thank you. And for those who were not here yesterday, let's talk a little bit about what we studied just a few hours before. Yesterday we looked at the mysteries of an ancient king's dream. We traveled to the wonderful land where mankind was born, to Mesopotamia, Babylonia, the rivers Tigris and Euphrates. 2,600 years ago, there lived a king by the name of Nebuchadnezzar. And he saw a dream, and in his dream he saw a big metal man with head of gold, chest of silver, thighs of bronze or brass, legs of iron, and feet of iron and clay. And a huge stone struck the image and became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Daniel said, by interpreting this dream, that different parts of the image symbolized the different parts or the different empires, kingdoms, which will follow one after another. So the golden head was which kingdom? Babylon. The chest of silver was Persia. Thighs of bronze, ancient Greece. Legs of iron is Rome, Rome, and feet of iron and clay is the divided world. And they will never cling or adhere to one another as the iron doesn't mix with clay, because the prophecy said the world will remain divided until the stone comes. And the stone symbolizes a radical change in the history of mankind, a radical transformation when Jesus Christ will come back to this world. There will be a new world with no suffering, no pain, no death, no sorrow, just a great world, and we could all be a part of that wonderful new civilization to come if we really want to get there with all our hearts. Well, tonight we will talk about visitors from other worlds. We mentioned yesterday that we respect people of all kinds of convictions, and we want every person in this auditorium, whether you are a Christian or a Muslim or a Buddhist or an atheist or a Jew, whoever you are, we want you to feel comfortable and at home. And yet, as a Christian, I'm going to present to you our textbook, and that is this ancient document which took 1,600 years to write, and that is the ancient Christian Bible. And this book was authored, it had more than 40 authors who lived in different times and ages. There were kings, shepherds, fishermen, prime ministers. They were people like you and me, and they had a supernatural contact with the maker of the universe. Well, the question is, why is it that if there is God in heaven, that there's so much suffering in the world? We are going to try to answer this question tonight. And let's talk a little bit about scientific probability of life on other worlds. Now, in recent years, in the recent 100 years, we observed the appearance of a new science, and it's called ufology. Ufology. Ufology talks about UFOs. UFOs are unidentified flying objects. A little over 100 years ago, an English novelist, Herbert Wells, an English writer, he wrote a novel which was called The War of the Worlds. And he was talking about aliens. He talked about strange beings which came to us from Mars and almost conquered mankind and then died of local bacteria. It was since those days that people in the civilized world had a lot of interest in aliens, in visitors from other worlds, and they supposed that we are not alone in the universe. Well, are we alone in the universe? We know that scientists are trying to establish a contact with other civilizations. Space stations are broadcasting radio signals. They're sending signals to space. Many spacecraft which went beyond the solar system, they are sending those signals constantly. Is there anyone in space? Are you here? Please identify yourself. They're trying to sell all kinds of signals, but so far, scientists had no responses. We've never heard of any response from the world of stars. We have never heard anything back. But there are UFOs. There are some strange plates that are flying, some balls that are flying, some spacecraft-looking machines which are flying here and there, and only some people have seen them, made photographs, and people ask a question. What about UFOs? Are they aliens? Could it be that they are visitors from other worlds? We will try to answer that question at the end of the program tonight. Now, scientists are convinced. Astronomers and astrophysics are convinced. They are sure that we are not alone in the universe. The law of probability states that at least one planet in 1 million must be inhabited. It may have the same conditions as we have: oxygen, soil, water, conditions favorable for life. And if so, then there is 180 plus, you add 15 zeros, inhabited planets in the universe. If one are, and we know that there are trillions of planets in the universe, because there are billions of galaxies, and each galaxy has billions of stars. The universe is so vast, and many of those stars have planets flying around them, satellite planets. And if 1 out of 1 million planets has life, it means that the entire universe is bubbling with life. But people ask a question. If the law of probability tells us that there is life on other planets, why is it that all the attempts to communicate with those planets failed? Why is it that we hear no responses when we send radio signals into cosmos, into space? Well, if you look at the ancient documents, they tell us that there is life in parallel dimensions. There are spirit beings which could appear and disappear. They have supernatural abilities. And in the Bible, these beings are called angels. You remember when on Sunday morning Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and when the ladies went to his tomb to anoint him with precious fragrances and oils, there was an angel of the Lord who descended from heaven. His countenance, his face was like lightning, and his clothing was white as snow. And the angel answered, "Do not be afraid, he is not here, for he is what? He is risen." And the angel said, "Jesus Christ is alive." Now the angels, who are these angels, and why is it that they sometimes remain invisible, and sometimes they appear to us and talk to us, and oftentimes they appeared in human form? Now, scientists have an explanation to invisibility. Now, would you like to become invisible? Okay? And walk around and listen to what's happening everywhere and nobody sees you. Well, it is possible to become invisible. And now, if I rotate like this, do you see me? Okay. You see me, okay. But if I rotate with the speed of light, I'll become a bright light. If I rotate faster than the speed of light, I'll become invisible. Okay? So if you rotate me with a speed of 300,000 kilometers per second, I will become 301 thousand kilometers per second, I'll become invisible. So, and in the Bible we see that the angels, they can transfer themselves in space with huge speeds, and that could be a secret of their invisibility. We really don't know. But some people believe that the world in which we live is not the only world. There could be parallel worlds, and the angels may be coming to us from a parallel world. Well, there are many different things that people are trying to learn today. And let us try to find some answers in the book of prophecy. I am convinced, I believe with all my heart, that this world did not appear by a blind chance. Some people who do not believe in God, they think that this whole universe appeared because of a big bang, because of a big explosion of energy. That energy exploded and we have stars and planets. But all of us know that an explosion by itself does not create order. An explosion creates disorder. An explosion just destroys everything. You can't put 1 million parts of an Airbus plane on the runway of Penang International Airport and bring about several tons of dynamite and explode everything, and you will not end up with a beautiful Airbus plane ready to fly. We know that you need mind, you need intellect, you need reason to assemble all those parts and produce an airplane. And today more and more astronomers believe that this whole universe, with all the laws of heavenly mechanics, could not appear by a blind chance. It could not have made itself, and that is why it has an origin. It has an intellectual beginning. A great Italian artist and scholar, a scientist, Leonardo da Vinci, he believed in the first engine, as he said. He said, there must be a reason why all of the universe exists. And Leonardo da Vinci was even praying in his prayers, "Oh my Lord, the first engine," he said. He was calling God the first engine, the one who gave origin to everything, who made the world. This world could not have made itself. This world has a great and amazing creator. Well, the universe is beautiful. And the more you observe the stars and the constellations, the more breathtaking a journey becomes. I met a few cosmonauts in Russia, and they all told me about their fascination after they went to space. They told me about this incredible experience. When you look at this beautiful planet Earth, and it looks so nice and so attractive. But when you land, when you come down, you see natural disasters. You see hurricanes, earthquakes, volcano explosions, tsunamis. You see wars and conflicts, separations and breakups in families. You see disease. You see human blood being shed. There's so much suffering, little children dying. Last year, the whole world was grieving with Malaysia, when Malaysia, for the first time in its history, lost 3 planes. If you fly Malaysia Airlines, it's one of the best airlines in the world to fly. Malaysia is an amazing land. By the way, your city of Penang is such a beautiful city. It's like little paradise on an island. It's such a clean city. Look at all the mountains. Look at the ocean, the Indian Ocean around it. Malaysia is a great land. It has wonderful people. It has wonderful industries and airlines. Hospitable, smiling, nice, charming. And then one plane disappeared. Another plane was shot. Another plane just shortly after Christmas, before the Happy New Year, fell just not far from Singapore. Why is it that little children die? People keep asking those questions about human suffering. And tonight we will try to answer these questions with the help of this book of prophecy, a book which predicts the future and also tells us the truth about the past. This book talks that in this world there are parallel dimensions and we are not alone. And there are great forces of good and evil which are fighting together all the time, fighting each other all the time. The forces of good are represented by the Creator, by God Himself. And this is how He talks about His attitude to us. He says, I have loved you with, and what? Could you read it out loud? Everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness, I have drawn you. God says, I love you with everlasting love. But there is Satan, devil. There is a representative of the forces of evil. And he does all these evil things in the world and often casts the blame upon the Creator. So there is this invisible controversy, the great controversy between good and evil in the world. And the entire world, whether we want it or not, who are born into this world, are involved in this great battle. Directly or indirectly, all of mankind is part of it. And people ask a question: where does this controversy come from? Where do these evil forces come from? 2,000 years ago, Jesus Christ, who is called in Islam Prophet Isa, he told his disciples, I saw Satan fall like lightning from where? From heaven. So suffering and evil did not originate here in this world. It came to us from heaven. It came to us from space, from other worlds, from other dimensions. And people ask a question: how did it all come to pass? What is the origin of evil? What is the origin of suffering? Well, the Bible says that once, we don't know exactly when, but long, long time ago, God made the universe. God made this wonderful, amazingly designed mechanism with trillions of stars. But God does not like to be alone. He populates the worlds. And according to the Bible, we are not alone in the universe. The other worlds are populated as well. And we know that we as human beings, we as men and women, we are different to the rest of the universe. We're different to the world of animals. We're different to the world of machines. We are unique. Now, why is it that we as parents have children? Why do we have children? Children are very expensive nowadays. Look at their education. And they are also very capricious. And they always ask you for something. Today, we live in a child-oriented society. 100 years ago, in Asia, people lived in a parent-oriented society. Everything was respect your mother and your father. All the people had a lot of respect. Today, we are living in a child-oriented society. Everything is for children. Children are the ones in the focus. But why is it that we have children? Why is it that we don't go to shops and buy those expensive Japanese toys? You know, the Japanese scientists, they are leading the world in robotics, and they make those beautiful toys which can vacuum clean your floors and will tell you, I love you, all the time. And they will always obey you. All you have to do is change batteries. Why is it that instead of these robots, we have children who are capricious, nasty, demanding, selfish, full of egotism, and they grow up and they want everything from us before we even die? Why is it that we have children? I think you will agree with me that we have children not only to prolong human race, but we have children because we want to love and be loved in response. We want to have children because we want to love and be loved in response. God makes human beings because He loves them. He doesn't want to be alone. He wants to have fellowship and communicate. God is a God of communication and fellowship. And we, as humans, we were made in the image and likeness of God. We have some features which God gave us, and those features He never gave to animals. And machines and computers will never have those. And one of the many features, besides intellect and mind, that God gave us, besides many features, God gave us freedom. God gave us freedom of choice. We can make choices. Now, if you give someone a freedom of choice, you risk. Because the person who has freedom to choose will choose for or against, will say yes or no. God made a perfect world, a holy world, a sinless world, a great world. But He populated the universe with free beings, free angels, free people who live all over the universe. But then, as the Bible says, a great tragedy came. When one of God's created beings, named Lucifer, misused and abused the freedom which God gave to His creation. We don't have a lot of information about him, just a few verses which summarize his personality. You were the model of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone adorned you. You were anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I ordained you. God made a beautiful angel, and that angel was shining so bright that when Ezekiel looks at this angel in a vision, the prophet looks at him, he sees all the precious stones which decorate this angel. But this angel had a lot of pride in his heart. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will be like who? Could you read it out loud? Like the Most High. I will be like God. So a creation wants to become a creator. An angel wants to become God himself. And he wants to dethrone, to depose God. He tries to break the laws which bring harmony and unity and well-being and prosperity to the entire universe. He brings the first false accords to the music of heaven. We have very little information. All we know that he was trying to tempt the other angels. And in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, it says that he was fairly successful with other angels because 1/3 of stars, it says, fell with him. 1/3 of the heavenly angels, they followed Lucifer. At first, this was just a concealed discussion among the angels, but later it became an open conflict. There was the first cosmic war. About 30 or 40 years ago, in Hollywood in America, they launched a chain of films, a chain of movies which they called the Star Wars. By the way, Hollywood uses a lot of biblical themes and a lot of biblical motifs, like the apocalypse, to make great movies and films which become Oscar winners and are becoming more popular in the world and fascinate human beings. Well, there was once the first war, the first cosmic war, the first star war. And as a result of this rebellion, a war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought. So there is a conflict, and they could no longer find themselves a place in heaven. God, of course, could have destroyed Lucifer and his angels. God could have said one phrase and they would have disappeared completely, vanished. But all we know is that God separates them from his presence. He casts them out. So the great dragon was cast out. That serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the what? The whole world. The whole world, not only planet Earth in the future, but the whole world, the whole oikumena, the whole universe. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 26, verse 18, Isaiah 26, verse 18, it talks about people in other worlds. It has the inhabitants of other worlds did not fall. He travels from one galaxy to another, from one planet to another, and he is trying to bring them to himself, to win them to himself. But the universe rejected him. They rejected him. Here they did not follow Lucifer and remained faithful to God. And over here in this passage, he's called that serpent of all. Please remember that phrase. We'll need it later. He becomes the devil. The devil is the one who is blasphemes, who is pronouncing lies against God, who is trying to put God in the wrong light, in the dark light. And he becomes Satan. He becomes an adversary. He becomes an opponent. Those who is constantly and permanently opposed to God. He deceives the whole world, and then this serpent of old comes down to this world. It says that he was cast down to planet Earth, and his angels were cast down with him. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So he flies around the universe, and finally he finds a place where he would have a home. And this planet would become his home because of the personal choice of our great parents. Once it was a perfect world. It was a great world which God made in a few days and then placed in that world the first family, Adam and Eve. God gave them his blessing. He said, be fruitful and multiply and fill the whole earth and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. God said, this whole world is yours, and he says, be fruitful and multiply. Now, some people say that the first sin of Adam and Eve was that they got engaged themselves in a sexual relationship. Well, that was not a sin. Sexual relationship in the family is a great blessing that God gave to all human beings. But we know that God said, be fruitful and multiply. And because of that, we all know that all humans are relatives. We're all blood brothers and sisters. About 15 years ago, in many countries, the scientists were doing their best to discover the genetic code of human beings, or the so-called genome. And now they've deciphered almost 99% of the genetic code of human beings. They even found the gene of death. We have a gene of death, and scientists are saying that if you take that gene out of our cells, out of the nucleus of our cells, you will be able to live all the time. You will not die. Your cells will regenerate for as long as possible, as long as you give them food, and you will be like perpetuum mobile. You will be like an everlasting angel. You'll live forever. But you have that gene of death which kills us all, and that gene of death is everywhere in nature, in plants and animals, and that is why we're dying. Now, the discoveries of genetics show that all of mankind came from one pair of parents. In the past, they thought that Asian people, Mongoloids, African people, Negroids, European, Caucasian people, Europeoids, Australoids, the Australian people and the Islanders, they are all different races and they all come from different origins. The discoveries in the world of genetics show that the Europeoids, Negroids, Mongoloids, and Australoids, all the great races, we all come from one pair of parents. And by the way, the discoveries of genetics show us that the first people in the world were not white people, as you see here on the screen. They had olive skin. And they looked like people from the Pacific Islands. They had narrow eyes, like Asian people, and they had olive skin. Of course, this is only a supposition. It can be proved. It cannot be verified. But we do know that we're all relatives. And today in this audience, I see hundreds of people, and you're my blood relatives. It's so wonderful. You're my brothers and sisters. You are my uncles and aunts. You're my nieces and nephews. I've got grandpas and grandfathers in this hall. Well, I've got only 2 children. I don't have more children. So I can't say I have children in this hall. But it's a good thing that we're all relatives. So if you if you go on the local bus and someone steps on your foot with a sharp heel, a lady, and you scream and you may tell her, "Oh, my dear relative, could you please take your foot out of my foot because you've just stepped on it?" Because that lady is your distant sister, okay? She is your relative. Chinese people, Russian people, English people are all brothers and sisters. Malaysian people, Indian people are brothers and sisters. We're all relatives. And that is why the evil forces are doing their best to separate the nations of the world and make us hate each other. The evil forces, Satan in particular, he is interested in racism. Racism has satanic origin. And nationalism of all kinds, Nazism, all of these things, they have satanic origin, because people in the world would live in peace if they would all realize with all their hearts and minds that we're all part of a great global family of human beings made by God Himself. We know that in the Garden of Eden, which presumably was in the Middle East, and today most archaeologists believe that the Garden of Eden was where Iraq is, in Mesopotamia, because in the Bible it talks about river Euphrates, which was flowing, river Tigris, and also another word for Euphrates, those two rivers which were flowing through the Garden of Eden, that human civilization was born in Mesopotamia, in Babylonia. And in that garden there were two trees. One tree was the tree of life. It had a unique ability to rejuvenate and regenerate human bodies. It could make you live without limits. Live an everlasting, eternal life. Live eternally. And there was another tree. And that tree was called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It was a test tree. A tree that would test the freedom of human beings. And God said, you should not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because on the day you eat of it, you will die. The fact that God mentions good and evil in Genesis 2 tells us that evil is already there. Evil is already there in the universe. And Satan is already trying to tempt different worlds. In actual fact, he tempts the whole universe, trying to recruit them to his side. And God said, refrain from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and eat of the tree of life, and you'll have an abundant life. You'll enjoy the development of human civilization. And we know that Adam and Eve had a giant intellect. We know that Adam had a capacity of his brain that would be even better than the global internet. He could name all the animals, all the plants, all the insects. He had giant capacity of his brain, and his brain was much better than the global computers. When you look at ancient civilizations, ancient Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, when you look at the ancient Chinese civilizations, the civilizations of Maya and Aztecs in America, they all tell us that ancient people were extremely smart, educated, and had a great mind. And we know that first humans were not primitive. They were not like ape-like beings, like monkey-like beings. They were not monkeys. They were extremely intellectual. Mankind degraded over thousands of years. And we know why. Once, Eve is walking in the garden, and she walks by the tree. And on the tree she sees a serpent. And the serpent, to her astonishment, starts speaking with a human language. And we all know who that was. The Bible says that serpent of old, called Satan, devil. Satan uses a medium. He's using an animal to talk to our mother Eve. And he says, has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree in the garden? Eve meekly responds. She says, we may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but the fruit of the tree which is in the midst or in the middle of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. And here in this passage we find that the dialogue is there, and then the serpent responds and says, you will not surely what? You will not surely die. God is lying to you. He accuses God of lies. And then he says, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. And we see the response. We don't know what happened in the mind of our great-great-grandmother Eve. We know of a sad and tragic fact that she ate of the tree. She gave the fruit of this tree to her husband, and he ate. And everything became so dark, so cold. And suddenly, for the first time in their lives, Adam and Eve felt shame. They ran away. They tried to hide themselves because they realized that something wrong and extremely tragic happened. They sinned. A fall of human beings happened. This world was finally captured, seized, hijacked by the evil forces. For the first time in all his travels around the universe, Satan found a base. This planet is like a giant spacecraft which is flying on its orbit around the sun. And it is a place where evil forces have their base. Satan promised, you will become like God. But they became not gods. They became slaves. Do you not know that to whom you present yourselves slaves to obey, you are that one's slaves whom you obey? So they became not gods, but slaves, slaves of evil and sin. And they had to leave their beautiful garden, which would later die, and we have no traces of it left. They were separated from the tree of life because God could not make them sin and live forever. God could not perpetuate evil and sin in this world, and that is why they lost access to the tree of life. And now they were in the hands of the great opponent, adversary, and of a great blasphemer of God. They separated themselves from God himself, and that is why we cannot see God face to face today. Many atheists will come to you and ask you, can you show me God and I will believe in God? Well, my friends, the simple truth is, if you see God, you will die. Because in the Bible it says that God is like a devouring fire. God in his presence is much more devouring and destroying than a hydrogen bomb. God has more energy than the rest of the stars in the universe because they're all his creation. God is the maker of space and time. And God could be seen and talked to and fellowshiped with by human beings before they sinned. But now there is this chasm, separation between us humans and God himself. That is why we cannot see him. And that is why God has to invent communication means. We can communicate with him through his revelations that he gave to us through his prophets. We can communicate with him because he gave us a book, a holy writ. He gave us a scripture. He gave us a book through which he tells us of who he is. And we can also talk to him. And though we don't see him, but we can talk to him in prayer because he fills the whole universe with his presence. He is here with us tonight in this auditorium, and he hears what we tell him in prayer. There are many other communication means with God, but these are the two main ones: prayer and reading his revelation, his prophecy, his heart, which he expressed in words and gave it to us. When humans separated themselves from God, they got separated from the world of nature. And that is why everything in nature changed. There's this fight for survival. We've got all these natural disasters. And finally, when people separated themselves from God and the world of nature, they got separated from each other. That is why we take each other's possessions, we steal. That is why we kill each other, we hit each other, we hurt each other, because we're sinners and we collide, and where we have contacts, we have conflicts. We see that there's so much evil in the world today. And it's all because this world is in the hands of aliens. It's in the hands of these evil visitors from other worlds. And finally, sickness and death came to this planet. Why is it that scientists are sending signals to space and they hear no responses. Well, the Bible gives us an answer. We are isolated from the rest of the universe because sin is extremely contagious. A few months ago, the whole world started talking about the Ebola virus in Africa. And several countries in Africa are living in isolation today because of the Ebola virus. They had to be quarantined. Now, if you fly to Penang on a plane, you know what the flight attendants do. They come with a spray. They spray the whole plane because they want to get rid of all the bugs and bacteria, because Penang Island is special. It should not take any bugs from the outer world. And we see that this world is isolated from the rest of the universe because sin is a disease which is much, much worse than the Ebola virus. Sin is a disease which contaminates and destroys. It's worse than cancer. It's worse than AIDS. It's worse than any epidemic in the world's history. And that is why you may send millions of signals into space, but you will hear no responses, because as long as sin is in this world, we will be isolated and quarantined from the rest of the universe. We also know who the UFOs are. Now, people ask a question: what are these strange spacecraft, plates, all these machines that fly in the skies, which some people see and even photograph and record on camera? Well, my friends, these are the toys of a fallen angel. The UFOs are the demons which try to show themselves in a form of aliens. And their main goal is to deceive human beings and distract them from their search of truth and take people away from God. And that is why ufology has big ties and friendship connections with Spiritism and many other occult sciences. And we know that this world in which we live today is in the hands of a great creator. The fact that this world was hijacked, the fact that this world was taken by visitors from other worlds, doesn't mean that it was taken by them forever. We know that God loved us with which love? Can you remember? Everlasting love. God loves us still. He loves us with eternal love. And that is why, to save mankind, He comes to this world in a form of a human being. He becomes a man. And 2,000 years ago, He was born in a humble dwelling, not in a beautiful hospital, not in a palace. He was born in a sheep barn, and He lived an amazing life. He told people that God is almighty. God is omnipresent. He's everywhere. God is omniscient. He knows all things. God can do everything. He is omnipresent. He fills the whole universe with His presence, but at the same time, He told humans that God is love. And He's extremely nice, and He loves every human being. He's compassionate. He is kind. And we know that Jesus Christ lived a sinless life. He was perfect. He was holy. And where Adam fell, Jesus always came out victorious. And at the end of His life, He, the righteous, died for the unrighteous. Sinless, died for the sinful. Holy, died for the unholy. He, the one He who made no sin, died for us all sinners and paid a full ransom, paid the full price, so that He could bring us back. That paradise, that Garden of Eden which Adam and Eve once lost. The cross, the blood of Christ, showed all mankind the real face of Lucifer. The entire universe now knew who is who completely. Now they knew that the fallen angel was trying to destroy the universe by his rebellion against God. And Jesus Christ was different. It says, for the Son of Man has come to seek and to do what? And to save that which was lost. He came to save us from the greatest terrorist in the history of mankind, from the greatest hijacker, who is the real cause of all the suffering. Now, in these times, we see the intensification of evil. We see so many disasters in the world of nature. We see wars and conflicts, the increasing risk of mankind destroying itself with nuclear weapons. People ask a question, what's the reason of all these things? The book of Revelation says, "For the devil has come down to you having great wrath, because he knows that he has" what? Could you read it? "A short time." He knows that his days are numbered, that there will be an intervention from space, from the world of God, from the dimension of God, Jesus Christ. And his angels will come back to this world and save us for eternity. We'll talk more about his coming and how we'll be able to recognize it and what will happen after it. We'll talk about these things in upcoming programs and lectures as we look at Bible prophecy. But there will be a destruction of evil forces, and it will all come because of God's intervention. But tonight, we have choices to make. Adam and Eve had this beautiful feature, and that was the privilege to choose. They could choose between good and evil. And it is because of their choice that we're all suffering today. But we need to make our choices ourselves. I grew up as an atheist. As a child, I knew nothing about God. I knew absolutely nothing about the Bible. I grew up in a country where 99% of the population did not believe in God. But when I was a teenager, I found the Bible for the first time. And I found about God for the first time. And I decided that I will choose God. I will choose this book of prophecy. And I will choose to live in a world to come. And I want to choose the way of good. And I never regretted my choice. My life was transformed, and I had the best dream of my life, and I don't want to wake up. Today, my friends, this world is full of invisible visitors of other worlds, and they bring so much harm and damage and suffering to us. I have a question. Would you like God, the maker of the world, to protect you? Could I see the hands of those who want to have the protection of God in their lives? Would you like God to protect you in your life? Thank you. I have another question to ask you. Would you like God not only to protect you, but to give you a place in the world to come, in the world that He's going to bring? Could I see the hands of those who want to have a place in the world to come? Well, my friend, in your heart, I invite you to make a choice tonight. Say in your heart, I want to believe in God, the creator of the universe. I want to believe in His Word, the Bible. I want to have a place in the wonderful world where there will be no suffering. In the world of which all mankind was dreaming and has been dreaming for thousands of years. I want to have a happy life, a better life. I want to have the protection of God's guardian angels. I want to have God's benefits in my life. If it is your desire in your heart to have God in your life, would you please, in your heart, pray with me right now? Dear God, O maker of stars and galaxies, today we realize that we are living in a dangerous world full of aliens, full of visitors from space who are not friendly, who brought suffering to us. And that is why we all realize that we need a protection of greater forces. And we're inviting God into our lives and hearts tonight. And we're praying that you will give us your protection, that you will give us your care, that you'll take care of our needs and help us choose the path of good. And please give us a place in the wonderful world to come. Amen. Thank you, my dear Malaysian audience. And there's a music item coming very soon. And you are just a wonderful, wonderful audience of people. So let's welcome our musicians. Thank you very much indeed. God bless you all.